am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson Number 2, Sunday, March 10th, 2024. The lesson is entitled Jairus' Daughter and the Bleeding Woman. Lesson text comes from Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. Related scriptures are Matthew 9:18 through 26, Mark 5:22 through 43, Leviticus 15:25 through 30, Numbers 19:11 through 22. The place is Capernaum. The time is 28 AD. Our lesson this week shows us how Jesus has authority even over death, and so offers us hope in any and every situation. Today's aim, facts, to show how Jesus offered hope to Jairus and the woman with the hemorrhage of blood. Principle, to show that faith in Jesus is the only way to have true hope in the face of difficulties and death. Application, to encourage students to see difficult situations and opportunities to trust in Jesus and see him work. Illustrating the lesson. Jesus offers us hope in our desperate situations. He only calls on us to have faith in him. Practical points. 1. Our needs should drive us continually to Jesus. Luke 8:40 through 42. 2. The Lord knows and cares for each one of us. Verses 43 through 45. 3. Faith in the Lord is well placed and will always be rewarded. Verses 46 through 48. 4. Faith is a powerful antidote for fear. Verses 49 through 50. 5. In Christ, one can find hope in any situation. Verses 51 through 52. 6. The faithless forfeit the right to see God's work. Verses 53 through 54. 7. The Lord is greater than any problem we might face. Verses 55 through 56. Golden text. But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. Luke 8:50. Today we have 3 lesson outlines. The first is a woman healed, Luke 8:40 through 44. The second is words of hope, Luke 8:45 through 50. The third is a girl raised, Luke 8:51 through 56. Introduction. God allows us an opportunity to smile even in the face of hurtful events. E. Edward Tornall once wrote in the Christian Reader about an experience he had as the soloist in a church service. While a student, I served as choir director and radio soloist for one of the local churches. One Sunday during our live broadcast, I faced the ultimate test of keeping my composure when the pastor announced my solo. Mr. Tornall will now sing the old Swedish hymn, Children of the Heavenly Father, in memory of Gus Johnson, who died at the request of his wife on January 18th. Fortunately, the accompanist came to my rescue by playing a long introduction, enough time for me to stop laughing. Jesus surely had a sense of humor, but even more, he has a deep sense of compassion for those who are hurting. A woman healed, Luke 8:40. And it came to pass that when Jesus was returned, the people gladly received him, for they were all waiting for him. Verse 41. And behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and besought him that he would come into his house. Verse 42. For he had only one daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was lay at dying. But as he went, the people thronged him. Verse 43. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any. Verse 44. Came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stanched. A multitude's welcome. Luke 8:40. Jesus' most recent ministry had been in the country of Gadarenes, which was located on the southeastern side of the Sea of Galilee, verses 26 through 39. This was part of the Decapolis, one of the five major regions of New Testament Israel. While there, Jesus cast a legion of demons out of a man and sent them into a herd of swine, which then perished by running off a steep place into the lake. This caused the people there to ask him to leave because of the fear his miracle instilled in them. After getting into a boat and traveling across the Sea of Galilee, Jesus arrived in Capernaum, located at the northwest corner of the sea. Because of the effective ministry he had already done there, the people eagerly welcomed him back. A large crowd had gathered waiting for his arrival. We are not told how they knew he was coming, but apparently the word got around rapidly so that he was greeted by a multitude. Jairus' request. Luke 8:51 through 42a. It was right after Jesus arrived that Jairus appeared, specifically seeking Jesus. He was a ruler of the synagogue, probably meaning he arranged the services, conducted the meetings, and was responsible for the care of the building. He was also responsible for supervising the teaching that went on there. The fact that a ruler of the synagogue was seeking out Jesus gives evidence that at least some Jews had accepted him. Jairus had heard and believed that Jesus had the power to help him. When Jairus found Jesus, he fell at his feet and begged him to come to his house. It was in an attitude of submission and desperation that he came. His daughter was dying, and he knew of no other place to find help. The last time Jesus had been in Capernaum, a Roman centurion servant had been sick and about to die. Luke 7:2. At that time, the centurion had sent elders of the Jews to appeal to Jesus for help. Verse 3. Is it possible Jairus had been one of the elders? If so, he would have had personal knowledge about Jesus and what he could do. Jairus certainly faced a hopeless situation. He had just this one daughter, and she was on her deathbed. Whenever a child dies, it is a heartbreaking situation. This is the kind of pain that makes us realize our only help is in God. For in spite of all the well meaning condolences of other people, the pain is so deep that it goes beyond human touch. We do not know what Jairus might have seen and heard about Jesus, but he was right in realizing that Jesus was the only one who could help. A woman's touch. Luke 8:42b through 44. Christ responded to his plea and began to move toward Jairus' home. Jairus' petition indicated faith in the person of Christ, and now that faith was put to a test. Since his daughter was dying, it seemed imperative that they move to his home with utmost haste. But the procession was interrupted as Jesus responded to another's need. Jairus' anxiety was certainly high, and his faith was real. But how strong was it? The multitude that was waiting for Jesus when he arrived in Capernaum now thronged him, moving along with him as he headed toward Jairus' home. The word translated thronged in verse 42 has the connotation to press upon or choke. The people were thronging around Jesus so heavily that he was almost choked off from being able to move at all. It was a matter of simply getting one foot in front of the other, probably in no more than a snail's pace. In the midst of this, a woman who had been suffering with hemorrhaging for 12 years came up behind Jesus and touched the border of his garment. Mark 5:26 says, "She had suffered much at the hands of physicians, but instead of getting better, she had continued to get worse. She had spent all her money on medical care without finding a cure, but the moment she touched Jesus' garment, she was immediately and completely healed. What even doctors had been unable to do in 12 years, Jesus did instantaneously just by a touch." Words of hope. Verse 45. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied, Peter and that were with him said, "Master, the multitude throng thee and press thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me?" Verse 46. And Jesus said, "Somebody have touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me." Verse 47. And when the woman saw that she was not hid, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared unto him before all the people for what cause she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. Verse 47. And he said unto her, "Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith have made thee whole. Go in peace." Verse 49. While he yet spake, there cometh one from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, "Thy daughter is dead. Trouble not the master." Verse 50. But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, "Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole." Jesus' question, Luke 8:45 through 46. A touch on a garment's hem seems like a very insignificant act. It was. However, the act of a subject kneeling before the king, showing her desire and willingness to be loyal and submissive, it was an act of hope based on what she had heard about this man, now being accepted by many as the Messiah. She knew the man she reached toward had a royal authority that had been granted from heaven. In a single act of desperation, she reached out, touched the garment's hem, and was healed. Surely such a simple act would be completely unnoticed by the rabbi. It was doubtful anyone was more surprised than she was when he suddenly stopped and asked, "Who touched me?" Verse 45. There was something in the authority of that question that caused everyone nearby to deny being the one who had touched him. Finally, Peter, incredulous over the idea, pointed out that in such a throng many were touching him. Why would he ask such a foolish question? Then Jesus said, "Somebody have touched me, for I perceive that virtue is gone out of me." Verse 46. The word translated as virtue refers to force or power. Jesus' commendation, Luke 8:47 through 48. It was obvious to the healed woman that there was no hiding truth from this man. Perhaps he looked in her direction as he spoke, for she saw that she was not hid. Verse 47. With great fear and physical trembling, she came forward and fell prostrate at his feet. We can almost hear the tremor in her voice as she humbly explained what she had done and why. Included in her explanation was the fact that she had immediately been healed and made whole when she touched Jesus' garment. In all that thronging mass of people, Jesus had recognized a single touch of faith different from all the accidental touches. It was this faith, not the action itself, to which Jesus responded. Jesus did not ask who touched him for his own benefit, but for the benefit of the woman. to give her the opportunity to express her faith before all the people. It was, after all, her faith that had healed her, because it had led her to seek out Jesus for healing. She now gave testimony of that faith before the thronging masses of people. Jesus' response was one of commendation, for she had done well. This woman's hemorrhaging had made her ceremonially unclean according to Leviticus 15:25 through 30. That meant everything she contacted became unclean also. No doubt it had been a terrible stigma with which to live for 12 years. But when she touched Jesus, she did not make Jesus unclean. Jesus made her clean. When she fell before him, Jesus tenderly called her daughter, Luke 8:48, and assured her that she could go away happy and with peace in her heart. Her faith had made her whole. Her hope in him had resulted in her healing. Jesus' encouragement, Luke 8:49 through 50. In the meantime, while all this was going on, Jairus waited for Jesus to continue his journey to his home. This must have been an agonizing time for him, because time was surely of the essence if his daughter was to be saved from death. Soon the word came, even as Jesus talked with the healed woman, a messenger brought the news to Jairus that it was too late. His daughter had died, and there was no need to bother Jesus any longer. Jesus was apparently standing close to Jairus, for he heard the bad news. He spoke to Jairus instantly and calmly. Fear not, believe only, and she shall be made whole. Verse 50. Jairus had heard many things about Jesus, but at this moment his faith was being tested to the limit. A girl raised. Verse 51. And when he came into the house, he suffered no man to go in, save Peter and James and John, and the father and the mother of the maiden. Verse 51. And all wept and bewailed her. But he said, Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth. Verse 53. And they laughed him to scorn, knowing that she was dead. Verse 54. And he put them all out and took her by the hand and called, saying, Maid, arise. Verse 55. And her spirit came again, and she arose straightway, and he commanded to give her meat. Verse 56. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them that they should tell no man what was done. The scene at the house, Luke 8:51 through 52. Once again, a test of faith was successfully passed. Every indication is that Jairus believed Jesus' words and encouragement. The journey continued until they arrived at his house, where the mourners were already present, weeping with sorrow over the little girl's death. Only a small group of people was going to be allowed to be with Jesus as he did what he was about to do. They were the apostles, Peter, James, and John, and the girl's parents. The others would have to wait outside. On the way to Jairus' house, Jesus had demonstrated his authority over disease. Now he was about to demonstrate his authority over death. His disciples were learning all the time as they accompanied him. Peter, James, and John had already witnessed his power over death once, Luke 7:11 through 15, and now they were about to witness it again. These three would eventually become important leaders for the believers after Jesus' death, resurrection, and return to heaven. This was a special teaching time for them, and one that would positively affect their future ministries. Jesus again spoke calmly. Weep not, she is not dead, but sleepeth. 8:52. Clearly the girl was dead, but her condition was like sleep in that it was temporary, as was the case with Lazarus, whom Jesus also described as sleeping before he raised him from the dead. John 11:11 through 14. Jairus' heart must have leaped with joy and hope all over again. His flickering faith continued to burn as he waited and watched to see what would happen. The private scene with the girl, Luke 8:53 through 54. Most of the other people present did not have the faith Jairus did. They had all seen the girl's body and knew very well that she was dead. Thinking Jesus' words about her sleeping were spoken in ignorance, they laughed at him derisively. Such a response might indicate that this was a group of professional mourners. There was no hope as far as they were concerned, and they were totally unaffected by Jesus' calming words. Jesus, unmoved by the response of these mourners, proceeded to usher them out of the house. For people, death is an irreversible condition. For God, nothing is irreversible, and he can overcome death simply by speaking a word, John 5:25. By raising Jairus' daughter physically from the dead, Jesus foreshadowed what is to come on the last day. This was not difficult for Jesus because he is the giver of life. To him, death is no more difficult to overcome than sleep. He could restore life as easily as he could awaken someone. The scene with the parents, Luke 8:55 through 56. The little girl's spirit had gone from her body, but it returned now at Jesus' command for her to arise. She got up immediately, revealing that there were no lingering symptoms from her experience. She was immediately alive and completely well. Jesus said that they should give her something to eat, probably because of her hunger following the time of illness. The parents were astonished, verse 56. The words indicates that they were besides themselves with amazement, but what had just happened was far beyond their greatest hopes. They had hoped Jesus could keep their daughter alive. Far better than that, they had seen him raise her from the dead and make her perfectly well again. Jesus did not want to be known for his miracles alone, which is probably why he told the parents not to tell people about what had happened. He had a message of salvation for the Jews, but he knew they would be distracted from the message if they only came to him to see the wonders he could do. Thus, he preferred not to publicize this miracle. Questions. 1. Why was the crowd so eager to meet Jesus when he arrived in Capernaum? 2. What individual sought out Jesus and why was he looking for him so desperately? 3. What happened to interrupt Jesus' journey to Jairus' house? 4. Why was it so surprising that Jesus asked who had touched him? 5. What was it about the woman that caused Jesus to respond to her? 6. What message came to Jairus as Jesus was talking with the woman he had healed? 7. How did Jesus respond to the bad news about Jairus' daughter? 8. Over what two areas did Jesus demonstrate his authority here? 9. How did the people respond when Jesus said the girl was asleep? 10. Why is it significant that Jesus refers to death as sleep? This concludes the Sunday school lesson for Sunday, March 10th, 2024. Thank you for listening. God bless.